Okay, I did a little setup here for you, and I've tried to keep it pretty simple. Just wanted to get some shapes and show you how I would start a layout typically of a painting. I have laid out the colors that I have suggested to you, and those are the colors that I will be using on this arrangement. And so let's kind of dive in and get started. I am going to do basically a bit of a value scale layout before I start doing anything else. I'm mixing together my ultramarine blue and my transparent red oxide to get quite a dark but warm color. I start out trying to squint down and create not only a value scale, but also how I want to lay out my composition. My shapes and so on don't have to be too exact at this point. Mostly I'm just trying to see where everything is going to lay on my canvas when I start really getting more involved into the work. So as you can see, just a really loose sketch at this point. That just helps me to see the image. Unfortunately, in order to give you an angle on me sketching or painting, I can't get a very good layout for you on what I am actually looking at when I am eyeballing the painting, but I will send you a separate photo that shows a little better exactly where I am positioned and how I am seeing the painting. Okay, I kind of have the layout then of the objects. Now I want to include the shadows as a part of the value. They are. I squint down again, and this all becomes basically one value here. Even into the apple itself, just coloring in. The paint is slightly thinned out with mineral spirits. I continue to squint because I just want to see light and dark at this point. Because of the way the light is hitting my apple, a lot of that apple is in shadow, but also because the color of the apple is dark, it is mostly going to fall into the dark value. Squinting down, always squinting, refining my apple shape there. One thing that I find is a easy error to fall into when painting apples is getting them actually too round. We tend to think of an apple as a round ball, and we tend to paint them that way. But if we do that, then we have a really static kind of shape. It doesn't have much interest to it. Again, squinting down and see my shadows are a part of my shapes. Lighter value that's almost a medium value coming out here. I'm going to just suggest that for a minute and come back at that and address it for you. This is right about here. Very strong value too. And the shadow underneath it is very strong. Your shadows are important also because they are going to tell your viewer where the light source is coming from, and that's going to be helpful in creating a sense of solidity and dimension to the objects, as well as using that to move the viewer's eye around in the painting, creating a better sense of design within the painting. Um, Not drawing any details at this point, just squinting and seeing how the light is hitting it. Now I want to get some of the medium values in there, so I'm going to use my same pile of color. I'm just going to thin it down thinner with my mineral spirits. Don't load your brush up too much if you do this, so you have it running all over the place, but this will give me my medium values in here better. This is all a part of the apple shadow here. Squint down, but also remember to check comparison. Where does this shape fit into the composition in relation to the apple? Look at that and compare those shapes. Are they, in the correct position? I actually have that grape a little too far down, but I can add a little bit more to it to bring it back up. There is a shape that this grape comes down further. His shadow is a little lighter, except for right where the grape hits it. I can take a little, because this painting is so small, lots of times I'll just do this with a paper towel, but because this painting is so small, I'm going to use it with a Q-tip where I actually subtract some of that wet paint to get the medium value and soften the edges. I squint down right underneath that grape is a very dark value because we want it to sit right down on that table. This is a darker value than or darker shadow rather than the other ones because it's closer to the light source. But the grape is also a little bit lighter in value right in here because the light actually shines through. The grape itself is a little bit transparent and allows the light to shine through. This one also has the light hitting it in such a way that we are seeing some light shining through on the bottom. I'm actually subtracting paint now, using my brush dry, wiping it down with a paper towel, and scrubbing it rather than brushing with it to remove some of the paint to create that lighter value. Again, I still have not started to look at these as objects. I'm still really seeing them, squinting down, seeing them as values. In order to create a sense of three-dimension and perspective, outer edges are going to be softer and broken. Sharp edges tend to pull forward, and soft edges push back. Okay, I've got a pretty good value thing happening here. This shape isn't quite right. Let's come up a bit. I'm going to go right off the page with it because I think compositionally that works better. This is now a medium value in here. I haven't even added any more paint to my brush. I'm just scrubbing around with what paint is kind of on there. This shadow underneath the apple needs to be moved up a bit more. Just refining the shapes. This is a very soft edge on that shadow because the apple, as it turns away, isn't going to create as strong of a shadow as it will when it's right on the surface. This is a pretty strong shadow here. Okay, we're getting a better sense now of the layout and the design. I'm going to add a bit of a tabletop in here that comes in about here. I don't want that to be too hard of a line or it is going to move forward. I'm kind of measuring it so it doesn't get all too wonky there. Soften it. Again, no paint added, just kind of dragging around the paint that's in there. Get a little softer edge there. Okay, that's my value layout. I'm pretty comfortable with it. A little bit too dark there on that grape, has some lighter on the edge. Okay, now I'm going to start filling in with some color. I am going with my shadow areas first. I am seeing mostly alizarin crimson there in the back side of that apple, but not quite as dark as the alizarin. So I'm going to lighten it up with some white, titanium white. And that creates kind of a cool color for the shadow. Cool colors generally recede, warm colors come forward. This is a little bit lighter across the top there because it's getting a little bit more light hitting that part of the surface around. I'm going to pull up a little bit of our cadmium red and mix it right in with that little pile there. Squint way down. It's going to help you see the values still. It's going to help you reduce the temptation to see this as an apple rather than just defining the shapes right now. There is a strong dark shadow of the apple right down on the bottom. I'm going to do that with the alizarin crimson. We've got that. Clean out my brush here with mineral spirits, wipe it down with my paper towel. I'm going to go ahead now and pull out more of that light value. I've got my cadmium yellow light and just a little bit of ultramarine blue because it is green. Okay, got way too much ultramarine blue there, but you know what? That's pretty close to the color that is closer to the core. So I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of that while I've mixed it up. It's pretty close to what's happening right down in that core. But now for the outer edge of that, it to be much more yellow. Squint down. Remember to squint. Always squinting. A little bit of white in with that yellow for that very top. This is really right here about, other than the actual reflection, this is about the lightest spot on the apple right there. Get that in. Try not to pull or draw too much of your underlying color in, or you'll end up getting everything very muddy. Just a real delicate stroke to blend those out without pushing them into one another. A little bit warmer in the yellow there on that top side right up here. So I've added some of my Cad Yellow Medium in there, which is a warmer yellow, a little more to the oranges. I've got a real pretty pure red up there at the top. So I'm going to do some Cad Red with a little bit of white to lighten it a tiny bit. Right up towards the top of it, the crown of it here. Squint down, don't forget to squint. I am seeing a little bit of a lightness towards the bottom of the apple there because it's reflecting the white surface that I've have it sitting on. So this is actually quite light right in here. Squint down. Okay, continuing with that pretty red right here. It's the most pure color of that apple is right in kind of the center where it's not being so directly hit by the light, but it's also not fully in shadow. My underpainting, unless I allow it to dry, is going to affect everything that I'm putting on top of it. So I've got to remember that and keep that in a focus when I am painting too. That I might have to go a step lighter than I want to go if I'm going to be pulling up any of that initial layout color that I put underneath of it. I'm going to smooth out some of my brush strokes, as you can do or not do, depending on how loose and bold you want the work to appear. This will give it a little bit more refined. If you smooth it out, it'll be a little bolder, more painterly if you leave those brush strokes strongly in there. I am going to put a highlight right on that apple right now because I want to get a good sense of where I'm going at with my light source. So that in right where that is being hit by the light. It is also being hit by the light right down here. It is a little bit softer being hit by the light over on the side here, so I'm going to reduce that down with my alizarin crimson mix a little bit. It's a little cooler. I'm actually picking up a secondary light source because of where I have to set my lighting for the camera. So to simplify it, the more you can maintain just one strong light source on your initial setups at least, the better it's going to be for you trying to work with. I am going to mix a little bit of my medium cadmium medium yellow in with my transparent red oxide to create a little bit more of a sort of wheat color. It would be yellow ochre in artist terms, because I want to create that stem in there, and that's about the color that that stem is. It's going to create a little bit more interest having that stem in there, like that stem. Okay. Okay, everything is relative to everything else in the painting, so I don't think I'm going to get any more precise on that apple until I've worked a little bit more on some of the other objects. The grapes are pretty close in color to the apple, but a little bit cooler, a little more to the purple, and I'm going to push that a little bit. Um, make it a little more obvious just because I want there to be a little more obvious variation from my apples. So I'm going to make them a little more purple feeling than what they really are. This grape back here seems to be one of the darkest ones. So while I've got my shadow color out, I'm going to put that grape in. Let's see, squint down. This grape here has the darkest value around the outside edge out there because the light is shining through the underside, which would normally be the shadow side, is really quite light because it's transparent and you're getting light, a glow of light shining through. And a bit of that dark is on this grape back here. These are my shadow colors for my grapes. Now my highlights of my grapes, alizarin crimson and some white. Test that color. And I think I'm happy with that. Not every grape has all of the same colors in it, but I am checking where these colors exist while I've got that color fresh and mixed up. Kind of picking and choosing around where I see this color in the different grapes. Squint down. Okay. Grapes actually have quite a warm, almost orangey glow that is happening there in the center. I'm going to take my Cad Yellow Medium and I'm going to try a little alizarin crimson in with that and see what color I come up with. I'm trying to get something that's not too intense but also isn't too muddy. Yeah, that's not a bad color, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. I'm going to try just adding a bit of white to my Cad red and see if that is a little better what I want there. It's a little better. And this is actually kind of falling because the light is shining through. You actually have a little bit of that falling onto your shadow surface. We have it even stronger over here in this grape. So far, I have just used one brush for all of this. And you can decide whether you prefer to use multiple brushes or just clean out your brush in between colors, depending on in part how you're working with your different what your subject is and how detailed and so on you want to get with it. Okay, on the tops of those grapes, there are some areas that actually get kind of sort of foggy almost. It's created by, from what I understand anyway, a fungus that actually is on grapes naturally that gives them sort of that chalky look in some places. So I'm seeing that on some of the grapes. So I have mixed together my alizarin crimson, that kind of purple color I made with alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. I've added quite a bit of white to it, and I've come up with this sort of whitish purple here. And this is good too, because then this helps to define the object of the grape from the grape behind it. There is some of that also happening on front or back, actually, of this grape here. And a little bit on the top of this grape over here. And on the top of this grape over here. Okay, I am going to add my highlights, which aren't pure white. They are toned down a tiny bit with the local colors. So on the apple, there was a little bit of red in my highlight. On the grapes, there's a little bit of that kind of purple in them. But they're pretty close to white. Squint down. I have a little bit of correction on the shape of this grape back here that I want to do. Plus, I want to soften that edge a bit so it's not moving forward on me. The way you soften an edge is to just like basically strike through it so it doesn't have a hard edge to it anymore. Just do something like that to get rid of those hard edges. See how hard this edge is here? We'll just strike through it and it softens it. I want to put some stems on those little grapes there. So I'm going back to my original almost black color that I had mixed up. This time it's going to be ultramarine blue and transparent red oxide, but it is leaning more towards the blue than the transparent red. First time when we did the sketch layout, it was more transparent red. And these are going to be using the side of my brush for these little lines. There's little stems on some of those grapes. Okay, they look more like cherries than grapes. That's fine. This grape in back here actually has a little bit of that glow through happening. So I want to get something a little bit brighter in here, mostly cadmium red here. Softening the shape. Strokes. Okay, now I'm going to, oh, wait a minute. One thing I want to do, this shadow here from this grape here also has some light shining through it, and it's quite intense right down there in that bottom edge. I'm going to put that in and then strengthen the shadow that falls underneath that so we aren't losing that grape, the bottom of that grape sitting on the table. And that's a little bit more reddish also because, again, that is light falling through the grape. Not happy with the shape of that grape, so I'm going to kind of push the paint around there a little bit to get a little better shape on that grape. The back side of that grape is quite a chalky color too, so get some of that chalkiness in there. Okay, I'm going to start now putting in my tabletop, and I want a larger brush. Put that brush down and go with something a little bit bigger, and start filling in some of my table cover. It's going to be, even though it's basically a white, it's going to be warmer where the light is shining on it and cooler away from the light. I'm going to exaggerate that a bit. For starters, and then I have basically, don't want to use pure white except for your very final highlights. I'm toning this down a little bit with the mineral spirits just so I can move the color about better, a little thinner. I've tried to set up a temporary setup here for you. This is not the easel and so on I usually work with, so I'm a little awkward, but doing that even lighter where the light is going to be hitting on the tabletop surface. It's okay to exaggerate your colors. It's going to create a more interesting dynamic in your painting, and you can always reduce the colors down afterwards. You can work with a smaller brush here if you want. Working with a larger brush is going to help you stay looser, create a more painterly look. So again, depending on what you want in your painting, you can use other brushes. I like a very painterly look, almost excessively so. My back of my white there is going to be pretty cool white. I'm taking some of my cobalt blue and adding white to it with a tiny bit, allowing a tiny bit of red to be in there. So it's a little bit more of a purpley color. See how soft I'm keeping that back edge of that apple, not letting it get too sharp. That way it will move backwards in space away from the eye and create the sense that it's rolling around behind you. The line is moving around behind you rather than being coming forward to you. A bit of blending through these colors just so that we have some harmony throughout the painting. Again, a little lighter and a little warmer on that surface that it's sitting on because it's getting more light. Your horizontal surfaces will get more light than your vertical surfaces will. So I'm going to start painting the cooler backside of it, but I don't want to get too cool with that because it's still getting a fair amount of light there. So I'm going to use a bit of my blue mixture, add some more white to it, and a little bit of that cadmium yellow light to it, and I come up with almost a greenish, gray greenish color for that back side of my table. Now your shadow colors are going to blend in some of that local color. So almost a dry brush over that to blend those edges and soften. Watching the shadow shapes, they're very important for defining my light source as well as the shapes of my objects. So just kind of moving some of this color in through the other also, again, for that color harmony to happen. Picking up color as I go around. Okay, I'm going to shift back to my smaller brush again because I want to refine some of the shadow areas. Some of them will be a little cooler right underneath where the objects are. Get that in there. There is a lot of light bouncing around this on the surface of this one grate back here I see. So I'm going to take my alizarin crimson and some white and a little bit of that blue, get a real cool red color. And that is right in here that there is some shadow that has really got a lot of color to it. It's not as dark as the grape though. Gonna lighten some of this up. Even though it's in shadow, I squint down and the shadows aren't as dark as my objects. So I gotta be sure I get those values correct. Shadows are a little cooler. I'm going to get some of my cobalt blue and some of my white in here. More cobalt blue. I'm going to go with the ultramarine blue in there. Make it a little darker. I got to get my values while still getting my color cooled off. Actually is a lighter value that's right in between those, but I don't want to get it too light. It doesn't look natural. Like that white line that has happened right there. That's kind of a mistake, so I'm going to get rid of that. But I have quite a hard edge on the back of this grape. I'm using alizarin crimson, and I'm going to get that edge kind of lost back on that grape there. Okay, I'm making a mess here of myself. I got paint all over my hands. Some more paper towels. This shadow right up here has a little bit of reflection from the apple, so it's kind of a warm reflection. But I don't want it to get too warm or it's not reading as a shadow. So I'm kind of combining my colors here until I get the look that I'm after for it. And now cleaning that brush off again. This shadow right here, very sharp edge. I got to soften that. I'm going to do that with a little bit of white and a little bit of cad yellow medium and a little bit of transparent red oxide. That nice soft, remember you just kind of pull it through if you don't want a sharp edge. There is a real dark shadow right immediately underneath the apple where it sits on the surface. I don't want to lose that because that tells me that is sitting on the tabletop. Continuing to squint down, seeing adjustments that need to be made at this point. I think that one grape is a little bit too purple. I'm going to add a bit of a red to it with the cad and the alizarin crimson, just to clean it up a little bit. A little bit sharper line of the mildew color in here to separate those two shapes a bit. It's the point where you just look at things, decide, okay, this isn't reading right. I'm not understanding what's happening here, so I need to define that a little more. This is pulling forward because it's too sharp of an edge, so I've got to push it back, and just kind of evaluating everything at this point. Softening edges, sharpening edges, increasing value, reducing value. Refining shapes that don't look quite right. Making color adjustments as you want to. Actually, quite a bit of light is coming back behind here. I want to lighten that up a little bit. Lost my shape of my apple a tiny bit. Get that back in there. Ended up with too sharp of an edge on the shadow. Lose that a little bit. Stepping back at some point. I can't do that because I'm sitting in a chair to be able to film this, but you should be stepping back away from your drawing, especially periodically, and to see how everything is reading and interpreting from a bit of a distance. It's not too bad, not too far from what I want. This edge right here, the apple, I feel like I've kind of lost it a bit too much. I don't mind edges that literally disappear into the background, but that one was a little bit flattened out. Background. Okay, so that's basically the idea. We can continue to refine it as we go along. You can play with it and just continue to soften edges. You continue to build the shapes, however you want to go with it.